We're in 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel 12. Let's pray together. Our Holy Father, we're so thankful for this another Lord's Day. We're thankful for the blessings of the past week. We're thankful, Holy Father, for those things that are provided for us, for our physical bodies, our food, our clothing, our shelter, our good transportation. But we're more thankful, Holy Father, for the spiritual blessings that are ours in Jesus, for the relationship we have with you as our Father, for the love that you demonstrate toward us in the things that you have done for us and for the future that you have promised if we'll but remain faithful. We love you, Holy Father, and we thank you for loving us. We pray that you would bless us during this time as we study from your word, that the things we look at that happened long ago might still teach us lessons and help us to share these things as we have opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 26, Joab fought against Rabbah of the children of Ammon and took the royal city. You'll recall from our previous studies that this has been an ongoing battle, a battle that has been going on at least a year, because if we go back into chapter 11, it came to pass in verse 1 at the return of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. Chapter 11 and verse 1, they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. So that's been going on. But as we've noted in previous weeks, that is not a battle that has been won. And that might partly be due to what happened in chapter 11 and in chapter 12 when David stayed behind and didn't lead the children of Israel into battle, as was his duty, as was his charge. But now we see this battle is still going on. Joab sends messengers in verse 27 to David. He said, I have fought against Rabbah, and I have taken the city of waters. Now therefore gather the rest of the people together and camp against the city and take it, lest I take it, and it be called after my name. So we see David gathering all the people together, and he goes to this city and fought against it and took it. Finally conquered. He took the crown of their king from off his head. I'm not sure where the king's head was when he took the crown off. And the weight thereof was a talent of gold, and it were precious stones in it were. And it was set on David's head. And he brought forth the spoil of the city exceeding much. And he brought forth the people that were therein, and the American Standard reads, and put them under saws and under harrows of iron and under axes of iron, and made them pass through the brickland. And thus did he into all the cities of the children of Ammon. And David and all the people returned unto Jerusalem. So you have this particular battle concluded. And at the conclusion, he takes the crown of this king off of his head. And it's something that he takes some pride in and maybe even wears. You may have some comments on the weight of that crown. I'm not sure exactly how heavy it was, but it seemed like it was pretty heavy and also worth a lot of money based upon the stones that were there. There was also spoil that he took from the city. And then verse 31, does your version read different? in regards to how he brought the people that were therein and put them under, that's what the American Standard was, under saws, under harrows of iron, under axes of iron. Tell me again. Labor. Okay. Okay. So there's two thoughts here, that these people that were again in this city now taken maybe captive and made slaves. What's the other possible thought based upon how the American Standard read? Death. That it was just, they were all put to death in various ways. And again, I can't tell you. You say, well, that just doesn't seem like that's something David would do. Well, he might. I'm not sure that he would not have done those things, but we're not sure. Either way, again, this particular battle has been fought, and this particular city has been conquered. He now has in his possession the crown that was on that king's head previously, and now all the people return to Jerusalem. Yes? Which one? It said, and thus did he unto all the cities of the children of Ammon. Oh. Yeah, okay, that was the sentence before that. Made them pass through all the brick mold is one mentioned here. So yeah. Made them toil, yes.
It's referenced over in Chronicles that he brought the people and cut them with saws.
Okay.
And sharp instruments.
Yeah, so a reference over into the Chronicles regarding again how he might have brought them over and cut them with saws. Do you have the reference in Chronicles on that? Was it First Chronicles 20? Yeah, First Chronicles 20 and verse 3 is what Brother Clay's referring to. This particular battle, as again these things are spoken of. Remember, you're going to study the First and Second Kings as we look at that, and then there's going to be First and Second Chronicles, which seems to be a lot of parallels, but it seems as though the Chronicles are written many years later, sort of as a comment, subsequent comment about these things. But hard to know, other than just either they were made slaves or they lost their lives. Okay, so again, one of the two, not sure, but at least you have those two possibilities as you look at this in the future. Any other comments down through chapter 12? Anything that you might have thought about? Yes.
So that crown would have been about 75 pounds.
So the possibility of that weight crown could have been as much as 75 pounds. I read that as well, and I started thinking about that, and I'm thinking, well, how does a man actually put that on his head and wear that? But maybe somebody held it. Yes, Sister Bobby.
Jameson Fawcett Brown says that some of the men, the kings that had crowns like that they were suspended over their head, fixed on a canopy.
Okay.
It was like an ornament.
Maybe something that held that crown. All you had to do is kind of sit in the seat and you just put your head up in it, and then you had it. I don't know, I'm not sure, but either way, we get the picture. It was some kind of crown and meant something to him, and I'm not sure if it meant anything to him in time. As best I can tell, there's never a mention again of this particular crown, but that just became a part of the king's treasures as we see from time to time.
Symbol of their defeat too, though, to take their crown.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, no doubt, a symbol of their defeat. Don't you remember when King Saul was defeated? What they did to him, and so again, that's just how it was. Chapter 13, it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. So we're introduced again. We're reminded of two of the sons of David. You might recall that David had 6 sons born to him in Hebron. First Chronicles chapter 3. Verse 1 and verse 2 and verse 3. And the first of these sons, his firstborn, born to him in Hebron, was Amnon. So Amnon is the firstborn, and you have Absalom, the third son born to him. So now we know who we're talking about. Absalom, the third son of a different woman. He had a fair sister. Her name is Tamar. So she seems to be his real sister. She will only be a step or half sister to the other brothers, but seems like they would share the same parents, same mother for sure. And Ammon, the son of David, the Bible says loved her. Does all your versions say loved? Okay. Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick because of his sister Tamar. For she was a virgin, and it seemed hard to Amnon to do anything unto her. Is that how your version reads? It seems hard, improper, impossible. It was though seemingly he didn't know how to act around her, didn't know what to say to her, based upon this vexation that he had for her. Love, as the Bible mentions it, she's his half-sister. The law at this point in time, did it allow this type of marriage? At this point in time, did it allow this anymore? The book of Deuteronomy gives us the law concerning that. After that point in time, that would have been considered what? The sin of incest. Prior to those things, years ago, prior to that, we know it wasn't sinful in God's sight because he allowed it to happen. Even one of his great servants was married to his half-sister, was he not? And even lied about it. They both did on a regular basis. And if you've looked at that before, and if you think about maybe the problems associated with it now, we know genetically now there can be problems associated with that, which seems to imply that prior to that there was not. And who would have been in charge of that? God could have definitely been in charge of that. At some point in time, if we think about the beginning, Adam and Eve had children. And for the world to multiply over like it did, what did those children have to do? And we think, well, that is just awful. That's just, we might even use the word gross if we think about it, but that's just because our mentality now, based upon what the laws are and how they have changed in God's side, is different than what it was then. But at this point in time, it's no longer lawful for this to happen. But he sees her, he sees his half-sister, and he is just fixated upon her, so much so that he just doesn't even know how to act around her or what to say around her. Well, he had a friend, the kind of friend that nobody needs, whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. So that makes him David's nephew. And Jonadab was a very subtle man, or yours may say crafty. Anything else? Crude. Crude? Is that what you said? Shrewd. Shrewd, that's exactly. Shrewd or crafty. Subtle. And he said to him, "Why, O son of the king, art thou thus lean from day to day?" Seems to look at him, it seems to be like maybe he sees someone depressed or down and out on a daily basis. He's just not acting like he normally would. Tell me what's going on. And so Amnon said to him, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." And Jonadab said unto him, "Lay thee down on thy bed and feign thyself sick. And when thy father comes to see thee and say to him, Let my sister Tamar come, I pray thee, and give me bread to eat and dress the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand." So he did. He laid down and he pretended to be sick. Verse 6. The king came, says, "What's the matter?" And Amnon says, "Let my sister Tamar come, I pray thee, and make me a couple of cakes that I may eat from her hand." So David gives that charge to Tamar. Go now to your brother. Go to his house, verse 7, and dress him, make him some food. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house. He was laid down. She took dough, kneaded it, made cakes, took the pan, verse 9, poured them out before him, but he would not eat. And then he said, "Have all the men from me." So those who would serve him, protect him, they're all sent out of the room. They went out, every man from him, at the end of verse 9. He then says to Tamar, bring the food into the chamber that I may eat of thy hand. And she took the cakes and did as he instructed. And in verse 11, when she had brought them near to him, he took hold of her. He said, come lie with me, my sister. And she said, no, my brother, do not force or humble me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. So see, you have someone there who understood what the law taught. Do not thou this folly. And then she gives two really good reasons why. Number one, and I, whither shall I carry my shame? So there would be shame associated with that. Even though we may say it wasn't her fault, there still would be difficulty for her from that moment forward. And as for you, you will be as one of the fools in Israel. This will be the fallout of this. Once this become known, this is how I'll be looked at, and this is how you're going to be looked at. And then she says, now therefore I pray thee, speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. What are your thoughts about that? There are a couple of possibilities when she says that to him. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. One possibility is what? One possibility is that maybe in light of still the ungodliness of the country, that the king, based upon just this being family and whatever it may be, would set aside the law. That David would just say, well, yeah, the law does say that, but I'm going to go ahead and allow this. So that's a possibility. What is the other one? In the moment, what might she say so that she might possibly do what? Escape. Possibly in the moment, she just, hey, listen, if you'll just ask the king, he'll give me, even though in her mind she knows, well, that's against the law, and he's never going to do that. Maybe he'll just think for a moment and he'll let me go and I can get away. Either way, whatever she was thinking didn't work because he didn't listen to her voice. He was stronger than she was, and he forced her and he lay with her. And seemingly almost immediately, he did what? Does everybody's version say hate? He hated her more than he loved her. The hate that he had was greater than the love that he had loved her. Comments on the love that he had for her initially. Brother Jim says lust. Could he have deceived himself into thinking that he did love her? And once it played out, did he really love her? He did not. So he was deceived. There's nothing said in here in regard to, I don't see Satan making an appearance here, but he's here. Has he not convinced, again, this young man, this man, he's deceived him into thinking you love this person, when in all honesty, all Satan wanted him to do was to fulfill a desire that would be fleeting, that would be for a season, and almost immediately things change 180 degrees, don't they? Yes, Sister Nancy. If he loved her, he wouldn't have done such a thing. That's exactly right. Now he hated her. So that what he thought was desire, something that he even thought would be worth, it just would have some kind of value, that he would even benefit from that in some way, almost immediately, because it was against God's law and against God's will. It was sin. The effect was just the opposite. He hates her. It's just it didn't turn out anywhere like he thought it would. And he even says, now get out. And she says, well, not so. Because the great wrong in putting me forth is worse than the other that you've done unto me. I just don't know, can't imagine all that's going through her mind, what she's thinking. I don't know if she stayed there longer, how it was gonna get better. I'm not sure what she was thinking. Maybe she thought it could be kept private, and now she's not going to be feeling this shame because everybody's gonna know, but the people that were put forth, at some point they're gonna know. But he's not listening to her. He didn't listen to her before. He's still not listening to her. He's the firstborn of the king, yes? And so he might even have some kind of mentality that he's what? He's the king's son. He can do whatever he wants. We've also, again, looked at last week regarding David and the multiplying of wives, and then the sin with Bathsheba, and then Nathan coming to him. Yes, brother, I'll get you in a second. Coming to him and saying, okay, you're not going to die, but something wouldn't depart from his house. The sword will not depart. There's going to be problems in your house from here on. Yes, brother Doug.
He's treating her like a whore. Violator, and then tell her to get out of the house.
He's definitely treating her in an ungodly way. You're exactly right. Shouldn't have done it to begin with, and now again, no way to act after the fact. Verse 17, he called his servant, told them, now put this woman out and bolt the door after her. She had this garment of different colors. Verse 18, it was a kind of robe that the king's daughters, who were virgins, wore. The servants brought her out, bolted the door after her. So you have Amnon left in that door, inside that room now with all that's happened, and Tamar outside. She puts ashes on her head. She rent her garment. She laid her hand on her head, went out on her way, and she cried aloud as she went. Any thoughts or comments on that part? Tragic. Absalom, her brother, said to her, hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? So once her brother sees her condition, sees her garment, sees the ashes upon her head, sees how she's crying, how she's acting, he had some clue in regards to what had happened. So obviously he might have already known about, again, Amnon and his supposedly love for his sister. And he tells her to hold her peace. He says, he is your brother. Take not this thing to heart. What about that?
I thought that was a chilling statement. Oh, don't worry about it.
We're going to find out that already now, we'll see it. Amnon, from this moment forward, is going to do what? He's going to take care of this. I do not know what he was thinking when he said this to her, if he meant it as coldly as it seems to sound. Yes.
Under the culture at that time, both within Israel and now, the oldest brother was considered the protector of his sisters. And so this is not just a cold question of, did something happen to you? This was a failure of him to protect her, and he sees it as his job then to avenge her. It's not the first time we've seen that from about with brothers and their sisters. And I don't know if he knew that David wouldn't do anything about it. It's interesting that it says David was angry. The Septuagint adds that because he was the firstborn, he would not punish him. So Absalom sees exactly what she saw, which is, this is as shameful as it gets.
Yeah. So there would be Absalom as an older brother of Tamar, and his not protecting her, and then now again the feelings he would have regarding revenge, and also what did he know regarding his dad? We'll find out shortly as far as what his dad or dad wouldn't do. Yes, sir.
I was just going to add that we do see a couple verses after that it says that he hated Amnon for that. So it's not that he was being cold about it. He was feeling a lot of things. That might have been why he said that. It might have been that he was trying to keep his emotions under control.
Yes, let's read a little bit further. I'm not saying he was cold in regards to his feelings. I'm saying the statement that he made to his sister seems to be a little disconnected, like he didn't care. I'm not saying he's not, we're going to read a verse later on that's not going to be said by him, but by somebody else, that he's been planning to do this for 2 years. So from this moment forward, he has in his mind what he's going to do. He hates him. That's not cold. The coldness is toward possibly a sister or maybe a non-caring. I just don't know exactly. Maybe our translation, or maybe it's how it's translated in the English, just isn't good. But the king heard of the things. The king heard of the things, verse 21. He's angry. But as has been said by Brother Darrell, he doesn't do anything about it. Absalom spake unto Amnon neither good nor bad. Is that what your version says? Okay, so wouldn't have given Amnon one clue one way or the other whether or not Absalom really cared in regards to what he had done. Didn't really act one way or the other. You act a certain way as far as letting that hatred shine through. Somebody go, boy, this guy really hates me. At the same time, didn't say anything positive to him either. Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. Yes, sir.
One of the things that I think about is that he's saying to me or anybody out there, no skin off my nose. But the point is, it is skin off his nose. And we have to remember that we are responsible in whatever fashion to take care of things godly way. And we say, no skin off my nose. It is a skin off my nose because we are going against God.
Yeah, that's right. As we think about this, the first 6 sons that are born to David in Hebron, you remember they're all from 6 different women. He'll then have 13 sons born to him in Jerusalem, 4 of which will be born of Bathsheba. I'm not sure how many other women bore the other 9. I don't remember if they're from each individual women or not. Brother Jim Turner, before the service, before class started, just said something about Absalom, and we just kind of commented for a section for a moment in regard to the complications of families, the difficulties that we have in families. Even, we may say, even in godly families, there can be problems and difficulties. Now, take that and multiply the sons to 19, the mothers of the sons to, I'm not sure exactly, and a half sister here. And when you go back and read Chronicles, there's other children born to him, David, of concubines. So even more complicated, besides the example that David himself has set. Either way, you now have Tamar, who has been raped by her half-brother, and Absalom, who now hates that half-brother. Yes, Sister Marnita. Very possibly could be. That might be the best spin on that. That's for sure. Yes.
I was kind of thinking the same thing too, just possibly because of the way he's kind of stayed neutral towards Amnon. He wasn't really showing. Yes, he could have stepped in and showed her great compassion and stepped up in that way, but maybe, I don't know, the culture or just sometimes men can't get to that place and show that kind of compassion. Not sure. But,
So-
allowing her to stay with him, that action shows compassion.
Yeah.
Just not sure.
So the final 2 comments basically just could be regarding Absalom and what he says to his half-sister, knowing that from that moment on, he's going to take care of this, that what he said to her would be more from the standpoint of showing his compassion for her. She's going to, again, as was stated, stay in his house and be there. And he already basically knows what he's going to do. And so maybe the idea is just trust me, I will take care of this in time. Maybe that's it. And in time, or 2 years later, Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal Hazor. And he went to the king and he said, I've got some sheep shears and I want the king and all my brothers to come down. And the king says in verse 25, no, because if we do that, we'll be a great burden to you. But he pressed him, but he wouldn't go, but he blessed him. And Absalom said, well, if you won't go, then let Amnon go with us. Again, 2 years have passed. Had this been a week or two after the events that we just read, I'm kind of thinking the antennas, you would think, would go up as far as on David's part, and he would go, well, I can't let that happen, because I bet you what's going to happen here is his brother's going to take advantage of this opportunity, and no telling what's going to happen to Amnon. But 2 years have passed. Absalom has acted in a way which hasn't in any way given his hand away as far as what he's going to do or what he plans to do. And so once Absalom presses the king about his brother, he lets him go. And Absalom had given his servants command, mark in verse 28, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and kill him. I've commanded you to do this. Be courageous and be valiant. And so they did this to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. When that happened, all the king's son arose, and every man got up on his mule and fled. And I'm no doubt that they possibly did, because they don't know that what? They could be next. They could be. So they got out of there as quickly as they possibly could. It came to pass while they were in the way, so they've left, they've fled from where this all happened, and they're returning, that the tidings came to David and said, Absalom has slain all the king's son, and there's not one of them left. We do not know who brought this report, but in our day and age, we would call that a false report, right? We see things happen on the news, and it's reported just like within a few moments or a few minutes after something happens. And then someone later on comes back, well, that was a false report. That's not exactly what happened. And so the story continues to unfold. That's not uncommon. But this is what's told to the king, and based upon what he's told, he rose up, he rent his garments, he lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by him with their clothes rent. And now you have this same character, the crafty one, the shrewd one, his nephew, who says, let not my lord suppose that they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. Now, is there any indication that this particular nephew of his is where all this happened? Does it seem to imply that he went there, or he's been here all along? And if he's been here all along, what did he know? He knew what Absalom's plans were. In fact, he'll say what? He says, for by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined since when? How would he know such a thing? Probably implied is Absalom would have what? Shared with him. Remember his shrewdness, his craftiness? How you feeling, Absalom, about what happened? Tell me how you're feeling. And then maybe he would, and maybe this crafty one would also say, okay, well, just wait a while. Wait a while. Let's let things quiet down a little bit. And then either way, you have him telling David, hey, listen, they're not all dead. Just Amnon. Now, therefore, let not the Lord the king take this thing to heart to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead, verse 33. So Absalom fled, verse 34. And the young men that kept the watch, they look out and they see a lot of people running their way by the way of the hillside. And Jonadab said to the king, behold, the king's sons are come, just as I said. And as soon as he made an end of speaking, behold, the king's sons came, lifted up their voice, wept, and the king also and his servant wept very sore. But Absalom fled. He goes to Talmai, again to the king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. The son there seems to be the son that's dead, Amnon. Initially, mourning for him. You're going to see that mourning pass as we continue. Absalom fled. He went to Geshur. He's there 3 years, and the soul of David longed to go forth to Absalom, for he was comforted now concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. Comments? Does Jonadab ever get his due? We'll see in due time. He seems to be worthy of getting his due. The Bible would say, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So anything else? Okay. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was toward Absalom. So Absalom gone now 3 years, and during that time, at least a lot of that time, you have David longing to go forth unto Absalom. Why he didn't? Why he didn't go? I don't know. Maybe it goes back to a comment Kath made regarding just men and some of their difficulties as far as some of the things they just don't do that they should do. Maybe it was pride. I don't know. But he's there for 3 years. Joab perceives that David, his heart longs for his son Absalom. So Joab comes up with a plan, doesn't he? He sends to some place called Tekoa. He fetched there a wise woman, and he tells her, come, pretend to be a mourner, put on mourning apparel, and I pray thee, and anoint thyself with oil. Be as a woman that hath a long time mourned for the dead. Go to the king and speak on this manner. And then Joab gives her script. This is what you're going to say when you go to the king. So she spake to the king. We see obviously that, again, even what we may think would be common people had access. If their case was, again, important enough, they could access the king. Maybe some people would sort of hear her case before, but then finally move her right on up and say, hey, I think you need to hear what this woman has to say. Well, she comes to the king. She fell on her face to the ground and did obeisance and said, help, O king. I just point out regarding her being able to go see the king, that kind of thing can't happen anymore. If we wanted to share our opinion with someone who's important as far as the world is concerned, good luck. Not going to happen. It did then. David said to her, well, what's the matter? What aileth you? And she said, of a truth. Now she says maybe a few things that may be truthful. I'm a widow, and my husband is dead. And then maybe a part of the story. Your handmaid had 2 sons, and 2 of them, they fought in the field, and one killed the other. And now the whole family, verse 7, is risen against your handmaid, and they say, well, you turn over him that smote his brother, so that we may kill him for the life of the brother that he slew, and destroy the heir also. Thus will they quench my coal which is left, and will leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the face of the earth. And the king said to the woman, go to your house, I will give charge concerning thee. It sounds as though by what he says here in verse 8, he's determined what he's going to do. Well, she presses him even more. My Lord, O king, the iniquity be on me. If that forces you to do something that really is unlawful, well, then let the unlawfulness of that be passed on to me, not the king. On my father's house, the king and his throne will be guiltless. The king said to her, whosoever saith anything to you, you bring him to me. He shall not touch thee anymore. And she said, I pray thee, let the king remember Jehovah thy God, that the avenger of blood destroy not anymore, lest they destroy my son. And in the moment, David says, what? Nobody's going to touch your son. Did he know this woman prior to this occasion? Did he know these 2 boys? Did he know why they were fighting? Not at all. But in the moment, he sees her condition, her mourning, everything that she pretends to do, again, under the direction of Joab. In the morning, in the moment, he passes sentence, and the sentence is, nobody's going to touch your son. We're almost there. She said, then let thy handmaid, I pray thee, speak a word unto my lord the king. And he said, say on. And then she says, wherefore then have you devised such a thing against the people of God? For in speaking this word, what you've just said, the king is as one that is guilty, in that the king doth not fetch home again his banished one. You were willing, based upon just what's happened in my life, to forgive and actually protect this one who's still alive, and yet you have a son who's been banished for 3 years, and yet no. And then she even goes further and tries to get David to understand the brevity of life. We must needs die. Time is passing. This is what you should have done all along. At some point in time, you should have gone and sent for him and brought him back. Yeah, yes, he murdered his brother, but you remember what his brother did to Tamar. And time is passing. We are as water spilt upon the ground. We can't get that back. We can't bring Amnon back. We can't take back what Amnon did to Tamar. That's water that's spilt on the ground. We can't get it back into the cup again. Neither doth God take away life, but deviseth means that he that is banished be not as an outcast from him. That's why I've come to speak this word unto the Lord my King. It's because the people have made me afraid, and your handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his servant. Again, all this script, the majority of it has been given to her by Joab. King, for the king will hear and deliver his servant out of the hand of the man that would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Then the handmaid said, let I pray thee the word of my Lord, the king be comfortable. Or another version, maybe read what? What's yours read? For rest. For as an angel or as the angel of God, so is my Lord the king to discern good and bad. And Jehovah thy God be with thee. The king answered and said, do not hide this from me. And she says, basically what? He says, did Joab put you up to this? Verse 19. And what can she say? As thy soul liveth, my Lord the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left. So you see David's wisdom, his understanding of those that were around him who might have done such a thing. She says, for thy servant Joab, he bade me, and he put all these words into the mouth of thy handmaid. Why did he do that in verse 20? The American Standard reason, Joab bade me, and he put all these words in the mouth of thy handmaid. Joab did this. He's used me, in essence, to teach you a lesson, to try to get you to reason, to see things. And what was the motivation behind it? To change the face of the matter, hath thy servant Joab done this thing. Joab's motivation to get this woman and to have her come and to say the things that she did, this story that he comes up with, conjures up, was to change the face of the matter, to change how this was going and to try to get her to go in a better direction. And I think sometimes the motivation behind us and why we sometimes need to say the things that we do to others. Someone mentioned the courage last week that took Nathan to come and to say what he did to David, and how that we also need to have that same courage, even though we don't know how it's going to turn out when we go to people who are going in the wrong direction. What motivates us to do that? Well, our love for them, but also we go to them because we'd like to change the face of the matter. We'd like to change the direction in which this is all headed, because in our humble opinions, we've seen this happen before, and if they don't change their direction, this is going to end bad. And what a great motivation. And my Lord is wise, according to the wisdom of an angel or the angel of God, to know all the things that are in the earth. And the king said to Joab, so this happens. That's it. That's it as far as this woman from Tekoa. I guess she's just dismissed. She just goes back. She's got a story to tell. Where were you yesterday? Oh, I went to see the king. Really? How'd that go? Well, let's go have coffee. And the king said to Joab, now brings him in, I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom back. So Absalom gone for 3 years. You have Joab who falls on his face, did obeisance, bless the king. Today, he says, your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, O king, and that the king hath performed the request of his servant. So he arose and he went to Geshur, and he brought Absalom. And when he got home, the king was so happy to see him, and they hung out together. let him turn to his own house, but let him not see my face. So he turned to his own house and he saw not the king's face. And it just makes me wonder, I guess, who would be there? Tamar, because that's where she was sent back up at the end of in chapter 13. So you have Absalom now come back after 3 years. He goes to his own house because he won't be seen by David, and we're still going to see time pass. Any comments on chapter 13 and 14? Yes, Sister Rachel.
I'm just struck by the fact that the king appears to have forgiven Absalom for what he did, but then he doesn't forgive the one who does what David should have done in the first place and defending her, taking care of her. Just doesn't make sense.
I believe as we just continue reading through our Old Testament, the things that were written aforetime, that were written for our learning, we are not spared the details of the bad. Again, we think about our world in which we live today and the things that happen that we sometimes read about, and we think how tragic, how terrible, and yet, again, since the beginning, these things have been a part of man, and they will be as long as people don't walk in accordance with God's will. People walking according to the Spirit will not commit such acts. People walking according to the flesh are going to be under the power of Satan. And anything and everything is possible in those situations.
You think about Tamar, she added to her situation as well. She was not guiltless.
I'm not sure. It almost goes along with what we said regarding Bathsheba. We know where she was. We know that David was able to see her. And then we noted maybe she shouldn't have been there. Maybe she should have had some idea as far as who might see her from where. But when she was sent for, we kind of made the comment at that point in time. And we sort of concluded, I think the majority, that it was like, well, she really didn't have a choice. She had to go because the king had sent for her. So again, from that point on, but certainly initially she shared in some of that. Tamar, she's sent by the king. Maybe she is as innocent as all get out and thinking, I'm just going there to do exactly what Dad told me to do. I'm going to make him something to eat, hoping he gets better because he's been down and out for who knows how long, with no clue whatsoever that he's going to do something that's against the law. And maybe since, if we think about even Amnon, it said he had found it difficult as far as even maybe when he was around her, she never got the impression that he was in any way attracted to her. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Tamar shared in this to the extent that maybe Bathsheba might have a little bit more.
My comment was regarding what we were just reading about with Absalom coming back. It's very easy to read into this that David's being very cold towards him. He's like, I don't want to see me sort of thing. Like he might be holding something against him still. But you do have to remember that he had a lot of other sons that kind of seemed like they would have wanted to kill him. So this might have been David protecting him because he's like, if he comes into the palace, he might not survive because of the other sons. They might kill him.
There might be. Again, they're just the possibility of David and him not seeing Absalom because Absalom would could maybe a threat to the other sons or whatever. We're just going to have, it'd be us filling in the blanks. We don't know. All we know is there's just going to be some more years of silence there, or just something that's still there that they can't get past. So we'll pick up with Absalom next week, and we'll look at how his appearance was, and we'll think about how much hair he grew every year, and some of us will have no comment about that, and we'll do that, Lord willing, next week. Thank you.